Aaron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is here. Welcome back, everyone, for more SPTV, where every day is a great day. Not to be in a cult. Not a good day. Not a good day at all for two cult members of the Scientology cult, specifically. One of them has become quite famous. She's known as the Pasta Queen. Huge on social media. She has her own TV show on Amazon. She's got a whole line of cookbooks. And I did a video about Nadia and her husband, Brooke Zimur, and a few days ago. And when I did that video, I said, you know, I'm not sure if Nadia was born into Scientology or if she joined Scientology. If anyone out there knows how Nadia got into Scientology, please reach out to me. Thank you to all of you who reached out to me. And I was actually shocked to learn that Nadia Muno, aka the Pasta Queen, not only was born and raised in Scientology, not only was a member of Scientology's C organization, but in fact is a third-generation Scientologist. Nadia's grandparents worked for L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology back in the 70s, maybe the late 60s, but definitely in the 70s. Her grandparents were a member of Scientology's Guardian's Office. That is the organization that led the infiltration of the U.S. government, the largest infiltration ever of the U.S. government at that time in the 70s. I'm not aware of a larger one since then, but, you know, maybe I don't know everything there is to know. The Guardian's Office infiltration of the government is what led to 11 high-level Scientologists going to prison, including L. Ron Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue Hubbard. So Nadia was born and raised in Scientology. In fact, her parents were staff members of the Scientology organization in Rome, Italy, when she was born. Now, when I say the Pasta Queen Scientology scandal just got so much worse, I am absolutely not talking about Nadia being a third-generation Scientologist. I am talking about what I have learned, what new information I have learned about Nadia's husband, Brooke Zimur. Now, guys, the video I did, was it 2 days ago on this, was pretty intense and pretty mind-blowing. And I'm not going to repeat everything I did in that video, but I don't have to repeat it because what I'm going to say in this video is so much worse. The name of the other video that I did, let me look it up real quick. It says, Pasta Queen's husband accused of assaulting a child. The title was slightly worse than that. I'm just not saying it out loud at this early stage of the video. What I've actually learned is that Nadia's husband, Brooke Zimur, actually abused dozens and dozens of children. And the story doesn't even end there. So let's take a look at Brooke Zimur. Wrong tab. Here we go. Brooke Zimur. Currently a Clearwater-based Scientologist. Brooke Zimur himself was born and raised in Scientology. He was in Scientology's Cadet Org, which was essentially an organization for underage children. And it turns out that even as a young child, Brooke was an absolute terror who terrorized, bullied, abused, and molested pretty much every child he came into contact with. Obviously, that's a slight exaggeration, but not much. And before I get too far into the video, I want to show you that, by the way, Scientology knows everything Brooke did. The people at that time all knew, the adults at that time all knew what Brooke did. And it's why he was sent out of the United States to England. Brooke Zimur is a prime example of Scientology sex trafficking, defined as, in part, an organization that has created a closed system due to policies set by on high that prevents any intervention or observation by external civil authorities, and as such prevents any abuse of children from being reported to the authorities, any of the abusers from being held accountable by the authorities, and as such allows such abuse to continue to occur, and benefits reputationally, financially, and in terms of membership by keeping this information secret. And that the organization benefiting in these ways by having created a closed system where abuse cannot be reported and abusers cannot be held accountable, thereby perpetuating the abuse, is legally, by definition, sex trafficking. Scientology is a multi-billion-dollar international family-destroying human trafficking cult, but it is also a sex trafficking cult. And Brooke Zimur is one of the primary examples of how and why. So whereas this here is Brooke's LinkedIn profile, notice, by the way, the company is Massive Alliance. That's going to come up into play in a few minutes here. By the way, I've sort of got a hard stop in about 25 minutes. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. Even though Scientology knows everything Brooke is, was, and has done. Let me show you. Scientology just finished holding a major Scientologist-only business conference here in Clearwater, Florida, called TigerCon 2025. It's called TigerCon because that tiger symbol is the symbol of Scientology's business consulting front group called WISE, the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. Every one of these speakers that you see is themselves a high-level, relatively well-off Scientologist. And oh, look, Brooke Zimur, featured speaker at TigerCon 2025 that just finished last week. And let's see, what's it? Let's look at some. Well, let's go back to Brooke and then we'll take a look at a couple of these ones. What does it say he is? Brooke, it says Brooke is a media and publishing technologist, entrepreneur, and author. Okay, there we have Tampa Brad Batchin, Stu Showerman, very wealthy Scientologist, Rebecca Minkoff, purse designer, daughter of David Minkoff, Manuel Suarez. Manuel's father was a wealthy OTA Scientologist, the most famous, wealthiest Scientologist in Puerto Rico, who jumped to his death from the top of a building. Joy Gendusa, a well-known wealthy Scientologist. Emmett Osborne, notorious Scientologist. Carla Jo Helms. I know Carla. Raffi Pendry, I was the best man at his wedding. I do not know Dr. Jerry Perry. I do not know David Breyer. Gabby Suarez is Manuel's sister. Benjamin Nagengast, he used to be a friend of mine. I don't know Aaron Cordovez. And we're back to Brooke Zimur. Okay. The who's who of Scientology business people in Clearwater, Florida. Okay. What do we have here? Before we get into Brooke, because that's that's going to be tough. Nadia's grandparents were, just might want to make sure I covered these bases. Nadia's grandparents, we covered that. Okay. Nadia and Brooke were in the Sea Organization together in the UK. Nadia and Brooke got married in about 2003. Now, after we're gonna cover what Brooke did to all the children in Los Angeles after I cover this segment here. So after the abuse, the Scientology found out about all the abuse Brooke was perpetuating upon the children in LA. They sent him to the UK. I don't know precisely how old Brooke was when he got sent to the UK, but he eventually became a full proper Sea Org member, was put onto full-time auditor training, became a Class 9 auditor. It's the highest level auditor you can be in Scientology without being a Sea Org member in Clearwater, Florida. A Sea Org member anywhere else in the world can only be a Class 9 auditor. Only in Clearwater, Florida can you be a 10, 11, or a 12, Class 12 auditor. Okay, by the way, in Scientology, they consider that being put onto high-level full-time auditor training, especially auditor training that requires you to do the upper-level confidential OT levels, is an unbelievable reward in Scientology. So they took a kid who was a horrific molester, and they rewarded him by having him become one of the Scientology's most highly trained auditors. What did Brooke do after a few years of being on post as one of Scientology's most highly trained auditors? He committed one of the most egregious violations you can commit in Scientology. It would also be one of the most egregious violations you could commit if you were, let's say, a licensed psychotherapist or psychologist or psychiatrist, which is he began, while married to Nadia, he began a sexual relationship with one of the public Scientologists that he was being who was paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars per hour to get auditing from Brooke. So not only did they begin this inappropriate, in the real world, it would be an illegal sexual relationship, but then he decided he wanted to escape. He wanted to escape from the Sea Org with his new toy, and he escaped with this woman for a week, and went on a week bender, just shagging the whole time, and then was recovered, and he came back. And Brooke was declared a suppressive person and expelled from Scientology. Now, guys, he never got expelled from Scientology for molesting those scores of children. He got expelled from Scientology for going and having a sex binge bender with one of the public Scientologists that he was supposed to be counseling. Okay, so what happens? He comes back, he gets declared and expelled, he gets sent away. Nadia gets told she has to divorce Brooke. She says, "No, I will not do it. I will stay with Brooke." And this is somewhere around 2007. Somewhere in here, Nadia gets pregnant, presumably by Brooke, but it's not quite clear when this happens. But we can presume that Brooke blowing, which is what they call when you escape, Brooke blowing, having this affair with this other Scientologist, coming back, being declared a suppressive person, being sent away, and Nadia becoming pregnant, all happens relatively closely to each other. Okay, so Nadia ends up leaving, but she's not allowed to talk to Brooke for a certain amount of time because he's working on his steps to get back into good standing with Scientology. I don't know the exact precise chronology here, but basically Brooke and Nadia end up both living in Clearwater, Florida, being public Scientologists. So Brooke gets back into good standing. He's no longer a suppressive person. He's a good Scientologist again. They're still married. They're living in Florida. This is all before Nadia becomes the pasta queen. Okay. Brooke ends up getting into business, doing some sort of, this is where it gets a little super crazy. He basically has one of these businesses. I've heard it described by some people as he was some type of a computer hacker. I've heard it described by other people as he actually wound up doing business with members of the Russian mafia. One way or another, if you have bad stuff about you on the internet, you would go to Brooke, pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he would get every negative thing about you deleted from the internet. I've been told he had some high-level contacts at Google, somehow between high-level contacts at Google, working with the Russian mafia, and being a computer hacker. I cannot represent the 100% authenticity of the information that's been shared with me, but it's been shared with me by several people. In about 2022, Brooke had to confess to his Scientology auditors, sec checkers, ethics officers that he was working with these mafia types, and they made him close down his business in 2022, is what I was told. Now, the fact that he does still have, and I was told that this massive alliance company is the company that he was able to build and grow and get revenue. By the way, you want to know what a small world Scientology is. Look at how many contacts on LinkedIn Brooke, Zimur, and I have in common. Over 40. Okay. And so does Massive Alliance exist? Does it not exist? Is it open for business? Has it been shut down? I don't actually know. Okay. So Nadia's mother, Nadia's grandma, Nadia's grandparents, because they were part of the operation or worked for the organization that helped infiltrate the U.S. government. Her grandparents, or at least her grandmother for sure, was declared a suppressive person and expelled from Scientology at some point. Nadia disconnected from her grandmother because of that. Nadia also then disconnected from her mother for about a 10-year period because her mother would not disconnect from her grandmother. So Nadia's mom wouldn't disconnect from her mother. And that, of course, made Nadia's mom either PTS or an SP in Scientology, potential trouble source, or a suppressive person. And so Nadia's mother was disconnected from for about 10 years. Sometime around 2017, Nadia's succeeded in somehow convincing her mother to come back to Scientology. Nadia's mother came from Italy to Clearwater, Florida, to Flag to get back into Scientology, where she promptly had a stroke and died. Boom, dead. Scientology hates it when you die at the Flag land base. So that was not good. Nadia's father is still very, very heavily involved in Scientology. Okay, so let's get back to Brooke as a teenager and how he managed to molest a whole ton of helpless, defenseless Scientology Sea Org kids. Okay, in the last video that I did, I showed on a map where L. Ron Hubbard Way was. There's a building called the AB or the Anthony Building about 1 mile west, 1 mile or less west of L. Ron Hubbard Way. And then there was a building called the ATA or the Apollo Training Academy. That building is about 1 block east of L. Ron Hubbard Way. So we're going to call it the ATA. So remember, the ATA is going to be where the really young kids are kept. And the ranch is where the older teenagers are kept. Okay. I'm not going to read this word for word, and I'm not going to reveal who gave me the information, but I'm just going to do my best. Okay. So the information is Brooke had been at the ranch where the older teenagers were kept. The older teenagers were kept at the ranch. The younger teenagers were kept at the ATA. This would have been around 1995. Brooke had been problematic at the ranch. And so he was sent to the ATA. Now, you want to talk about, sometimes when I do these videos about Scientology, people will say, I can't believe something like this can happen in the United States of America in modern day. And the truth is, there's all sorts of horrific abuse that occurs in all sorts of organizations in the US up to the very present day. So I don't necessarily have that exact same take. But as an ex-Scientologist, what really gets me is that, and what I want to emphasize here is that Scientology very boldly and loudly proclaims itself to be the most ethical group on the planet. They say this unironically over and over again. Scientology is the most ethical group on the planet. And the Sea Org is supposed to be the elite of the Scientologists. In fact, the job of the Sea Org is supposed to be to get in ethics on the planet, to put in ethics on the planet. You have a kid, and I don't even have the information of what Brooke did at the ranch that was so bad that they literally sent him. Let's keep him away from the other teenagers. Let's send him to where the really young kids are. But imagine having anything, imagine being in any organization, much less an organization that calls itself the most ethical group on the planet, and having a kid who's a problem, and you're like, you know where we should send him? Where the younger kids are. It's kind of like notorious Scientologist pedophile, Johnny Maurer. When Scientology found that he was molesting Scientologists and non-Scientologists all over the Western United States, they said, hey, let's get this guy out of here. Now, why did they do this? They want to get him out of the jurisdiction. They go, where should we send him? I know. Let's send him where there's more Scientology kids than any other city in the world. Let's send him to Clearwater, Florida. Oh, and let's not tell anyone why we're sending him there. Okay. Fuck, I'm going to run out of time here. All right. Okay. He was being problematic at the ranch, and so he was sent to the ATA. When he arrived at the ATA, he started terrorizing all of the girls and the younger boys. Basically, Brooke was a massive bully. He was violent. He was very heavy set, and he was also very tall. He was a big boy, and his face was covered with bad acne. In the last video that I did, I talked about Brooke Zimur molesting a girl named Diva Gustafsson. And this person shares with me that when Brooke would go into the dorms of the young girls and molest them while they were sleeping, this person says you'd wake up with Brooke's hand under your PJs and say, "What are you doing?" And he'd say, "I'm looking for Diva. Do you know where Diva is?" And it says, he did this to many girls, and it went on for a while. And the girls did not talk to each other about it. Oh, shit. He did not talk to each other about it because they figured it was a weird one-off, or they forgot about it after they went back to sleep, or maybe they figured it was a dream, or they didn't realize it was happening to any of the other girls. One day, the adults gathered all the children up at the ATA. This is what kills me. This isn't a thing of like they can say no one knew. They literally had a fucking meeting with everybody about it. Okay? They gathered up all the children at the ATA, all of the girls in one classroom, and all of the boys in another classroom. And they told all of us what had been happening. It had been reported by at least one or two of the girls. And then I guess they asked him about it. And they told all the kids, they basically said to all the kids, don't worry about it, because Brooke was being sent away. And I believe that is when they sent him to England. And then sometime later, he became a Sea Org member in England. After the big announcement, the girls started talking amongst each other. And it seems like it had happened to most of the girls in my dorm at the Anthony building. The girls in my dorm were roughly 8 to 11 years old. I definitely remember Brooke being much older than us. He was for sure a teenager, although I do not know exactly how old he was exactly. Now, in my last video, I said that Diva Gustafsson had reported Brooke to two adults named Heather and Kathleen. And I didn't give their last names, but this time I'm going to give their last names. Heather Swaney and Kathleen Jordan were the two adults that all of this was reported to. Those are obviously Sea Org members, and there are obviously other people that were, informed of all of this. Heather and Kathleen were overseeing two of the girls' dorms. There was a third girls' dorm that had nobody overseeing it. There was another adult named Elsa Rojas, a woman who was in charge of the boys' dorm. Now, it's funny because my first reaction when I found this out is like, why would they put a woman in charge of the boys' dorm? But then I was like, my next reaction was like, I don't know. Is it better if it's a guy? Like, I don't know at this point when you think of the stuff that happens. Elsa Rojas later married Tom McKinnon. Tom McKinnon then sexually assaulted other young girls at the ATA. Scientology knows full well that the adults it put in charge of the pre-Sea Org children were sexually abusing them. And that teenagers were sexually abusing tiny little kids. And in the case of Brooke Zimur, they literally sent him to another country. That is trafficking. So then Brooke, so imagine, Brooke has all of this in his history. Scientology knows all about it. They send him to the UK. They reward him, at least in the Scientology way of thinking about things, by doing his OT levels up to OT 5 and becoming one of the most highly trained auditors you can be. He then commits one of the biggest crimes you can commit as a Scientology auditor, which is to sexually take advantage of someone that you're auditing. They kick him out for that, and then they welcome him back, and they let him move to Clearwater. By the way, Brooke now has 4 children, 3 of which are girls. Brooke becomes one of the most popular public Scientologists. He donates over $2.5 million to Scientology. I'm told his house, him and Nadia, the Pasta Queen in Clearwater, Florida, is where the celebs would hang out. Michael Pena was hanging out there all the time. The registrars would hang out there all the time. It was the place to be. And to be honest, Brooke's past actually explains why he donated so much money to Scientology, because the price of being allowed to live in Clearwater with the past that Brooke has, that price can only be paid with gold. Yeah. And it turns out it's 2025 right now. Just last year, after 21 years of marriage, Brooke and Nadia actually divorced. And I have to wonder whether Nadia has any idea at all that for 21 years she was married to a notorious child molester. And then I have to wonder if she were to find out today, if she would care. I actually think she would care. But realize, keep in mind, she's not just a Scientologist. She's a 3rd generation Scientologist. She's an ex-Sea Org member. By the way, Nadia's job in the Sea Org was to do public relations for the Jive Aces. The Jive Aces is like a swing band that made of Scientology, veteran Scientology Sea Org members. And they've even performed on like the X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or something. And look them up. You can look up the Jive Aces. They're not even just Scientologists. They're Sea Org members. And the Sea Org sends this band around to perform at different festivals and stuff like that as a weird way of trying to get good public relations for L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. It's very strange. The Jive Aces have always been a little confusing to me when I was in Scientology. Like, well, what's going on here? What is this really about? So I'll tell you, I mentioned Elsa Rojas and Tom McKinnon. I'll do a whole separate video about Tom McKinnon. You've got rapists and pedophiles everywhere in Scientology, and Scientology doesn't care. As long as they can get money from you, you're welcome to be there. It's only if you question David Miscavige, that's when they really care. You speak out about Scientology abuse, you speak to the press, you speak to the media, you do a blog post, you do an interview, you do a video on the internet, gone. You rape a few people, you're good. You molest some kids, you're okay. That's aberration. Scientology can fix that. You talk some shit about David Miscavige, you're gone. This is an organization that unironically calls itself the most ethical group on the planet. Okay, guys, I know there are a bunch of starred comments, but I really do have a hard stop. I have to go. I have to go right now. So I apologize for not being able to read these. That's probably it for me for today, folks. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe